My mother-in-law tried to break up my marriage, so I broke up her entire family. My mother-in-law tried to break up my marriage, so I broke up her entire family. Let me tell you how it all began. From the moment I said yes to her son Jake's proposal, Charlotte Whitmore made it crystal clear that I would never be good enough for her precious boy. Picture this, my own birthday dinner at Romano's Italian Bistro, where I'm picking up the tab for the entire table, and she leans over her chicken parmesan to call me a gold digger. The irony wasn't lost on me as I signed the credit card receipt. Then came the engagement ring drama. Jake had saved for months to buy me a beautiful $2,500 solitaire from Tiffany's. Not exactly royal jewels, but it meant everything to me. Charlotte threw an absolute fit about how extravagant it was, making Jake feel guilty for wanting to show his love. She kept muttering about practical girls and sensible choices every time she caught sight of that diamond. But her most calculated move? The wardrobe sabotage. I worked as a marketing coordinator at Henderson & Associates, where professional appearance mattered. One weekend while Jake and I were visiting, Charlotte offered to do my laundry. Sweet gesture, right? Wrong. She replaced my and Taylor blazers and Calvin Klein dresses with cheap knockoffs from Dollar General. When I noticed the difference Monday morning, the poor stitching, the scratchy fabric, she used it as ammunition. See how materialistic she is, Jake? She can't even appreciate a kind gesture. For 2 years, I endured her passive-aggressive comments, her helpful suggestions about my career, my cooking, even my hairstyle. Jake would brush it off with "that's just how mom is," or "she means well." I bit my tongue because I loved him, and I thought time would soften her heart. I was wrong. The turning point came during a family barbecue in Jake's backyard. Charlotte was grilling burgers on their Weber kettle, playing the perfect suburban matriarch. I was helping set up the picnic table when I overheard her talking to Jake's sister, Ashley, by the pool. "She's not going to last," Charlotte said, flipping a burger with unnecessary force. "Jake will see through her eventually. They always do." "Mom, she seems nice enough," Ashley replied, though I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. "Trust me, sweetheart. I've dealt with girls like her before. Pretty faces hiding calculating minds. But I've never failed to protect my children from making terrible mistakes." That's when I saw it, that look in her eyes. Cold, determined, almost predatory. Charlotte Whitmore wasn't just disapproving of me anymore. She was planning something. And that's exactly when my real nightmare began. The black Honda Accord first appeared outside Wellington Marketing Group on a Tuesday morning. I noticed it because the driver seemed to be reading a newspaper, but the pages never turned. By Thursday, the same car was parked across from Fitness Central when I finished my evening yoga class. Friday, it followed me to Whole Foods. When I mentioned it to Jake over dinner at our apartment, he laughed it off. "Babe, you're being paranoid. It's probably just coincidence. Black Accords are everywhere in Atlanta." But I knew what I was seeing. Someone was watching me. The surveillance continued for weeks. Different parking spots, but always that same car, always that same figure behind tinted windows. I started taking pictures with my phone, documenting times and locations. Jake grew irritated when I brought it up. "Evelyn, you're becoming obsessed. Maybe you should talk to someone about this anxiety." The gaslighting hurt worse than the actual stalking. Then came the day that changed everything. I arrived home from work to find our apartment door unlocked. My heart pounded as I called out, but Jake wouldn't be home for hours. Nothing seemed disturbed, until I walked into our living room. There, centered perfectly on our coffee table like a gift, sat a manila envelope. Thick, official-looking, with my name typed on a white label. Inside were private investigator reports. 3 months' worth of surveillance photos, detailed logs of my activities, twisted interpretations of innocent interactions. The coffee my colleague Brandon bought me during our morning meeting? Evidence of an affair. My monthly deposits at SunTrust Bank? Proof of hidden accounts. My lunch with my college. Roommate Rebecca? A suspicious rendezvous. Every aspect of my life had been documented, photographed, and distorted into something sinister. The investigator's notes painted me as a manipulative woman leading a double life. But here's what chilled me most. Charlotte wanted me to find these reports. This wasn't evidence gathering, this was psychological warfare. The photos were professional quality, taken with expensive equipment. Whoever she'd hired wasn't some amateur. This was a systematic campaign to destroy my marriage from the inside out. I sat on our sectional sofa, papers scattered around me like confetti at a funeral, and realized Charlotte had been planning this for months. Every family dinner, every polite conversation, every moment she'd smiled at me, she'd been building a case. Jake found me there 2 hours later, surrounded by the evidence of his mother's obsession. "What is all this?" he asked, picking up a surveillance photo of me entering Starbucks. "Your mother hired someone to follow me," I said quietly. Jake's face went through several emotions: confusion, disbelief, then something that scared me more than Charlotte's scheming: doubt. He was actually considering whether the reports might be true. The jewelry incident happened 3 weeks later at Easter dinner. Charlotte had outdone herself preparing a feast: honey-glazed ham, loaded mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, and her famous carrot cake. The Whitmore family filled her dining room in Buckhead: Jake's father Robert, his sister Ashley with her husband Trevor, and their cousin Nathan with his wife. I was helping clear the main course when Charlotte's piercing shriek cut through the conversation. "My grandmother's bracelet," she gasped, clutching her wrist dramatically. "It's gone." This wasn't just any piece of jewelry. The antique diamond tennis bracelet had belonged to Charlotte's grandmother, a woman she spoke about with reverent tones. It was supposedly worth $15,000 and had been passed down through 3 generations. Charlotte made a production of searching the dining room, checking under plates, moving chairs, enlisting everyone to help look. Her performance was Academy Award worthy, the perfect balance of distress and determination. "We should check everyone's purses," she announced after 10 minutes of theatrical searching. "I'm not accusing anyone, but these things sometimes get mixed up accidentally." My stomach dropped. I knew exactly what was coming. One by one, she went through the ladies' handbags. Ashley's Coach purse yielded nothing but the usual: wallet, keys, lip gloss. Nathan's wife Emma carried only essentials in her small clutch. Then Charlotte reached for my Kate Spade tote. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding," she said sweetly, but her eyes held that same predatory gleam I'd seen at the barbecue. She dug through my bag with deliberate slowness, building suspense like a magician before the big reveal. When her fingers closed around something hard and metallic, her gasp was perfectly timed. The diamond bracelet emerged from the bottom of my purse, catching the light from Charlotte's crystal chandelier. The silence in that dining room was deafening. 8 pairs of eyes stared at me, and I watched my husband's face transform. For just a moment, maybe 3 seconds, Jake looked at me like he didn't know who I was. That flicker of doubt broke something fundamental inside me. I don't know how that got there," I stammered, but even to my own ears, it sounded like a guilty person's excuse. Charlotte's response was masterful. "Oh honey," she said, her voice dripping with false compassion. "We all make mistakes when we're stressed. I won't press charges because family forgives family." She was positioning herself as the gracious victim while painting me as the desperate thief. The other family members shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Even Ashley, who'd always been kind to me, looked uncertain. The drive home was torture. Jake didn't say a word until we were inside our apartment. "Did you take it?" he asked quietly. "How can you even ask me that?" "Because it was in your purse, Evelyn. How else do I explain that?" The fact that he couldn't immediately dismiss the possibility told me everything I needed to know about how much damage Charlotte's campaign had already done. 2 weeks after the bracelet incident, Charlotte called me at work. "Evelyn, dear, would you like to have lunch? I think we need to talk." Her tone was different, warmer, almost friendly. I thought maybe she wanted to apologize, to clear the air. I agreed to meet her at the Capitol Grill downtown. She was already seated when I arrived, looking perfectly put together in her Chanel suit, sipping a martini like she owned the place. The restaurant buzzed with the lunch crowd, businessmen closing deals, ladies who lunched discussing charity galas. "You look tired, sweetheart," she said as I sat down. "This whole situation has been hard on everyone." We ordered. I picked at a Caesar salad while she worked through a lobster tail with surgical precision. The conversation was surprisingly pleasant. She asked about my work, complimented my new haircut, even shared a funny story about Jake as a child. Then, after the waiter cleared our plates, she reached into her Hermes bag and pulled out a checkbook. "I think there's been enough drama," she said, uncapping her Mont Blanc pen. "It's time we settled this like adults." She wrote out a check and slid it across the white tablecloth. $50,000, made out to me, signed in her perfect penmanship. I stared at the check like it might bite me. I don't understand. Of course you do. Her smile never wavered. You're a smart girl, Evelyn. Smarter than I initially gave you credit for. When I didn't respond, she pulled the check back, tore it up with deliberate movements, and wrote another one. $75,000. Still not enough? Another check. $100,000. Every woman has a price, she said, leaning back in her chair. The question is, what's yours? The restaurant noise faded to background static. I could hear my own heartbeat. I've done this before, you know. Jake's first serious girlfriend in college, pretty little thing named Brittany. She held out until $80,000. Then there was Rebecca, the one he dated after law school. She only needed $45,000. You're not even the prettiest gold digger my son has brought home. Her voice was casual, like she was discussing the weather. This was just business to her. I'm not for sale, I managed to whisper. Everyone's for sale, dear. The only question is whether you're smart enough to take the easy way out, or if you need me to make things more uncomfortable. She signaled for the check, the restaurant check, not the bribe, and paid with her American Express black card. Think about it, she said, gathering her purse. But don't think too long. I'm not known for my patience. As I sat alone at that table, watching her click across the marble floor in her Louboutin heels, I realized I'd been playing checkers while she'd been playing chess. But what she didn't know was that I was about to change the game entirely. The family dinner in September started like any other. Charlotte had prepared her famous pot roast with all the fixings at the Whitmore family home in Brookhaven. Jake's father Robert carved the meat while Charlotte played hostess, making sure everyone's wine glass stayed full. She'd been suspiciously sweet to me for 2 weeks, which should have been my warning. Charlotte was never sweet without an agenda. I have such a fun idea, she announced as we finished dessert, her signature peach cobbler. Why don't we look at photos from our beach trip to Hilton Head? I finally got them all organized. Jake's family had spent a week at their vacation house in South Carolina the month before. I hadn't been able to join them due to a work conference in Chicago, a detail Charlotte had seemed particularly pleased about. She connected her iPhone to their Samsung Smart TV with practiced ease. Technology is wonderful, isn't it? I can share memories with everyone so easily now. The first few photos were exactly what you'd expect: family shots on the beach, sunset dinners at the Crazy Crab, the kids building sandcastles. Everyone laughed and shared memories as the images flashed across the 65-inch screen. Then suddenly, there I was, kissing another man. The gasp from Ashley was audible across the room. Jake's wine glass slipped from his hand, red wine staining Charlotte's white carpet like blood. Photo after photo appeared on that massive screen. Me with a tall, dark-haired stranger at restaurants I'd never been to. Walking hand in hand through hotel lobbies I'd never seen. Embracing in what looked like passionate encounters. The images were professional quality, perfectly lit, completely convincing. If I hadn't known they were fake, I might have believed them myself. I'm so sorry everyone has to see this, Charlotte said, her voice breaking with perfectly timed emotion. But I couldn't let my son live a lie anymore. She'd thought of everything. The man in the photos even resembled my type, tall, athletic, dark hair. The locations were all in Chicago, where I'd supposedly been for work. The timeline matched perfectly with my conference trip. I hired a private investigator after the bracelet incident, she continued, tears flowing down her cheeks. A mother's intuition, you know? I had to protect my son from this betrayal. The room was silent except for the air conditioning and my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. Jake stared at the screen like he was watching his own execution. Jake, I started, but what could I say? The evidence was overwhelming, expertly crafted, completely damning. She's already shown these to your colleagues at the law firm, Charlotte added quietly. And your friends from college. I thought they deserved to know what kind of woman you married. The manipulation was breathtaking in its completeness. She hadn't just framed me, she destroyed my reputation throughout Jake's entire social circle first, ensuring I'd have no allies when the reveal came. As I looked around that dining room at the faces of people who'd once welcomed me as family, I saw only disgust, disappointment, and pity. Even Ashley, who'd always been kind, couldn't meet my eyes. The walk to my car while the family whispered behind me was the longest of my life. Each step felt like walking through quicksand, every breath a struggle. Jake followed me outside but didn't try to stop me from leaving. "I need time to think," he said, his voice hollow. Sitting in my BMW in their circular driveway, watching him walk back into that house without me, I finally understood. This had always been Charlotte's endgame. She would never stop because destroying me had become her purpose, her identity. But as I drove away from Brookhaven that night, something crystallized inside me. If Charlotte wanted to play with family secrets, then we'd play. And I was about to show her what a real chess master could do. I hired Fletcher Investigations the next morning. If Charlotte wanted to dig into people's lives, I'd show her what a professional could really uncover. "I need everything," I told Samuel Fletcher, a former FBI agent who specialized in deep background investigations. "Financial records, employment history, medical records, personal relationships, everything." It took him 2 months to find the gold mine, but when he did, it was better than I'd ever imagined. Charlotte's perfect family had a secret buried 35 years deep. Jake's cousin Nathan, Robert's brother's son, looked nothing like his supposed father. But he had Charlotte's distinctive Roman nose and her exact shade of emerald green eyes. More interesting was the timeline. Charlotte had given birth to Jake just 6 months after Nathan was born, despite claiming Jake was 2 months premature. The math was simple. Charlotte had been having an affair with her brother-in-law while Robert was traveling for business. Nathan wasn't Jake's cousin, he was Jake's half-brother. Fletcher's investigation revealed hotel receipts, restaurant bills, even old love letters Charlotte had been careless enough to keep in a safety deposit box. The affair had lasted 2 years, producing Nathan and nearly destroying 2 marriages before Charlotte convinced everyone that her premature baby was just small for his gestational age. For months, I played the role of the defeated daughter-in-law. I apologized for the misunderstanding about the photos. I thanked Charlotte for accepting me back into the family with such grace. I attended every dinner, every gathering, every family event with a humble smile. And all the while, I planned. The opportunity came in November when Charlotte was gushing about family heritage during Thanksgiving dinner at their house. "Wouldn't it be amazing to trace our family bloodline?" I suggested innocently. "Those DNA tests are so popular now. We could all do them for Christmas." I played directly into her ego, her pride in the Whitmore family name and their supposed pure lineage. "What a wonderful idea!" Charlotte exclaimed, though I caught a flicker of something in her eyes. "We could even create a family tree to display in the living room." She couldn't refuse without looking suspicious. Christmas morning at the Whitmore house was picture perfect. Charlotte had outdone herself with the decorations, a 12-foot Fraser fir from North Carolina, thousands of twinkling lights, enough wrapped presents to stock a small store. I handed out beautifully wrapped 23andMe kits to everyone: Jake, Robert, Ashley, Trevor, Nathan, Emma, even Charlotte's sister Margaret who'd come up from Savannah. Charlotte forced a smile as she accepted her kit, but I could see the panic building behind her eyes like storm clouds. "What a thoughtful gift, dear," she said, her voice slightly strained. "Though I'm not sure how accurate these things really are." "Oh, they're incredibly precise now," I replied cheerfully. "The science is amazing. They can detect relationships going back generations." The next 2 months were delicious torture. I watched Charlotte try to find ways to delay, to discourage family members from actually submitting their samples. But the enthusiasm was too high, the momentum too strong. One by one, the results started coming in. The family group text exploded with excitement as everyone's ancestry results arrived. Ashley discovered she was 15% Irish, which explained her red hair. Robert found distant relatives in Scotland. Margaret learned she had unexpected German heritage. Everyone was sharing screenshots, comparing percentages, marveling at their genetic diversity. Then Nathan got his results. "Hey, this is weird," he texted the group, followed by a screenshot. "It says I have a half-sibling match with Jake." The silence in the group chat was deafening. I was sitting in my apartment when Jake called, his voice shaking. "Evelyn, what does this mean?" "The DNA results. Nathan and I share 25% of our DNA. That's not cousin level." Within hours, the family had compared all their results. The science was undeniable. Nathan and Jake were half-brothers, not cousins. The only way that was possible was if they shared a parent. And since Robert wasn't Nathan's father, that left only one possibility. I drove to the Whitmore house that evening, finding the entire family gathered in their living room like mourners at a wake. Charlotte sat in her usual armchair, but the regal posture was gone. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. There must be some mistake, she kept saying. These tests aren't reliable. Everyone knows that. But Robert was staring at Nathan, really looking at him for the first time. Seeing Charlotte's nose, her eyes, her stubborn chin. 35 years of willful blindness crumbling in real time. When? Robert asked quietly. Charlotte's facade finally cracked. It was a mistake. A moment of weakness. You were always traveling, always working. I was lonely. When? He repeated. 1987 to 1989, she whispered. The confession unleashed 35 years of buried truth. Nathan's parents, Robert's brother Thomas and his wife Linda, had divorced when Nathan was 3, supposedly over irreconcilable differences. Now everyone understood what those differences really were. The family split that night like a tree struck by lightning. Robert moved out within a week, filing for divorce and citing adultery and fraud. Ashley stopped speaking to her mother entirely. Nathan's world exploded as he learned his entire identity was built on lies. Most of the extended family cut Charlotte off, unable to forgive decades of hypocrisy and manipulation. The woman who'd positioned herself as the moral center of the Whitmore clan was revealed as its biggest deceiver. Jake apologized to me endlessly. The fake photos, the bracelet, the private investigator, he saw it all clearly now, understood how his mother had orchestrated my destruction. How did you know? He asked as we sat in our apartment, finally reunited. I didn't, not at first, I admitted. But your mother taught me something important. Everyone has secrets. She just forgot that rule applied to her too. Family dinners moved to our house, where Charlotte wasn't welcome. I thought I'd won, that justice had finally been served. Then my birth control failed. The positive pregnancy test arrived with morning sickness and flowers at my office, beautiful white lilies with a card that made my blood freeze. Congratulations. Grandmother knows. The untraceable text came an hour later. You took my family. Now I'll take what grows inside you and raise it right. Blood is blood. Sitting in my office bathroom, staring at that pregnancy test, I realized Charlotte had been playing a longer game than I'd ever imagined. She wasn't finished with me. She was just getting started.